Hello, good morning, my creative friends, and welcome to Painting in Your PJs with Minette. I'm Dr. Minette Riordan. I'm in some brand new PJs. It was a really smart idea to name this show Painting in Your PJs because it does give me an opportunity to indulge in a variety of fun pajamas. And we were at Costco yesterday and found a couple of pairs, these and a bright pink pair that are a little on the wild side, and I love them, and I will wear them another day. Super excited to be here with you all on the 4th of July. Happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day to my friends in the United States, and happy beautiful Thursday or Friday, depending where in the world you are this morning. And when I started to think about, you want to come say good morning, Diego? Come here. Yep. He's being very snuggly this morning. This is Diego Rivera. He's my big snuggly boy this morning. And when I thought about what do I want to do today, I wanted to do something a little bit different, not just continuing to work in my intuitive collage journal. I love intuitive collage and I'm really having a lot of fun with it. Good morning, Carol. And when I thought about what I wanted to do, I wanted to share one of my favorite ways of what I call an intuitive painting process. And what is intuitive painting anyway? So for me, intuitive painting is very much about following our own inner knowing, our own intuition, not here to try to finish a painting today, but just to play with paint, just to explore the theme of freedom. Sometimes intuitive painting is a way to find an answer to a question that you may be sitting with sometime. Super excited to be here, Polly. This is my happy place. My husband and I are not, big party people, and there's lots of crowds at the lake, and so we're happy to be home. So I'm in my happy place in this studio, delighted to be here with all of you. Hey, Marian, good morning. If they would have had red, white, and blue ones, I would have bought them, but they did not. But summer flowers felt like a good theme. Leslie, my beautiful friend, happy to see you here as well. And so when I started thinking about where do I want to go with this? How do I want to share these ideas today? I wanted to really be focused on play. And when I think about that theme of freedom, it feels very much like a form of play, to be able to move at will, to have freedom of choice around how we get to spend our time. But what does it mean to have freedom on a canvas? Good morning, Tori. Awesome. I'm glad good for you for coming on your way to the gym. We went to the gym yesterday and we'll go again tomorrow, trying to get back, rebuild those healthy habits. But I'm glad you stopped by to say good morning and happy 4th. And good morning and good morning, good morning. What does it mean to paint freedom? And for me, it's all about learning to completely detach from outcomes and expectations of what it's going to look like at the end. And I did have a little bit of a vision of where I thought mine might go this morning. And I don't know, right? It may completely change along the way. We'll see. This is an intuitive process. And I was flipping through my stencils, and in my stencils found this mask of this woman. And I'm like, well, that kind of feels a little bit like freedom as well, and a celebration. So maybe this might want to show up. And so we'll see. I never know exactly. There's always an idea. But the first step to the intuitive painting practice is always just to prepare your materials. So I grabbed a variety of paints and I didn't think too much about it. Not really loving what's on that. That one definitely needs to be my favorite green there, but I grabbed a few to just play with and experiment. And I'm just going to trust that they're the right colors. I can go pick other colors, but I just wanted you to have a sense of, I'm going to start with some warms and then going to maybe move over here into some cools. This magenta can kind of be a little bit of a crossover in the center. I also have some white, and I have this artist loft paint, which I don't love, but this metallic black is fun. So I grabbed a little bit of black. I've got a little bit of Payne's gray here as well. I've got a Sharpie marker. I've got a variety of brushes in different sizes and shapes. And somewhere right here, I have my brayer because oftentimes I love spreading paint with brayers. And I just grabbed a stencil and a couple of handmade stamps as well for maybe doing some mark making. Don't know which direction I'm going to go with all of this, but I wanted to have things here because once we sort of dive into that intuitive painting practice and process, I don't want to have to stop and pause and go scramble around for this or that. That's one part of it. The other part of it is the practice of creative constraints. I have so many tools and supplies in my studio, and for our process this morning, we don't need all of them. I don't need all of the 100 stencils. I need just a couple. I need a couple of stamps. We can get ourselves stuck in overwhelm and indecision, which is the opposite of freedom when we give ourselves too many choices, right? I was actually having a conversation with a friend about this, about when there's too many choices. It's also called the elegance of limits, but it's the principle of creative constraints has been proven to make us more creative. So when you have fewer choices, you're actually more creative. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. You can Google it and get more information if you wish. And one of the other things that I like to do, so I cleaned my space, I have fresh water, I have water to drink, right? I'm all set. I've got some paper towels, I've got some baby wipes here. What I don't have that I usually like for this process are oil pastels, but they're not here, so we're not going to use them this morning. I'm literally going to use what's on my table in front of me, which is probably already more than I need for this practice. So I have prepared my space. I cleaned out all the collage stuff and replaced it with painting supplies, gathered all the things that I was going to need. And then after that, I just pause for a moment, right? We're stepping into a different way to approach the canvas. And in this case this morning, I'm actually working on a piece of recycled plywood from a friend of mine, Rebecca Zendejas, who's an amazing woodworker. My nephew had painted it purple. I think it was covered with paint underneath, so I just went ahead and put a little coat of gesso on that. But I'm working, so canvas, an art journal page, recycled wood. It doesn't matter what the substrate is. Pick a substrate that you enjoy working on. And I even love to kind of feel that surface. Like this one's really rough, but there's something about it feels good under my hands. I like to just take a couple of deep breaths. Sometimes I might light a candle when I sit down to do this particular practice. And I just want to bring myself here fully to this space and this time right now here in this moment. I have nowhere else I have to be. I have all the time that I need. And I just want to stop and connect and set an intention. And my intention this morning is to have fun, to play, to let my inner critic go take a hike so that I can really enjoy this process. And I like to just express a little gratitude. Thank you for those of you that are joining me here live. Thanks for those of you who catch the replay to this process. I'm grateful to have the space, the time, these wonderful materials. And those of you that know me and have been around for a while, one of my favorite ways to get past the blank page is just to paint some marks or draw some marks, get something down onto this big white space here and just settle in even more to that practice and that playfulness. And so my intention today is to play. Our theme is, I want to paint freedom. And so the question is, what does freedom look like? Feel like? Are there colors that express freedom for me? Are there textures, right? Sometimes I like to come in and just scribble on the page. Sometimes an image might appear in that scribbles, but sometimes it's just about, this pen is just about dead apparently. Sometimes it's just about activating the energy, settling in. All this is going to get painted over. No one's going to see what I write. The question that's occurring to me is, where am I not feeling free right now? What feels like more of a constraint than I want? Where am I maybe not choosing freedom? Would be another question to think about. So we can take as long as we need for this journaling practice this morning. Maybe put a few firework energies. And the idea here is just to kind of get some of the busy clutter, any preconceived notions or judgments out of our heads, move past that blank page or canvas, and just start to settle in, catch my breath, and really just be here now. When I think about intuitive painting, it's so much about just be here now on this page. Give myself permission to let go of that long list of to-dos and other things that might be cluttering up my head. And I'm going to grab a pretty big paintbrush here. This looks like it's an angled one, maybe an inch, inch and a half. Most of my paintbrushes are so worn at this point that I can't read anything on them. And I'm just going to get some color down. And I am starting here with yellow and magenta. Those are going to mix and make some orange and maybe a little spot of pink. It's funny, I'm not usually a pink girl, like it would not be that first thing I would gravitate to. Maybe it was my pajamas that inspired me to choose pink this morning, but it completely popped out at me. And you could use a brush for this part. You could also use any kind of a scraper, right? Or like old hotel card, gift card. And I'm just going to start to move paint around. And I'm going to let these colors kind of mix together on the canvas. And I just want to get a coat of paint down. Again, we're just really creating a background here, getting that energy going. That makes a really bright, beautiful orange. And it's going to be a little bit, let me see if I change that, if we can turn that light down just a little bit. So it's going to be glary while that paint is wet. What I'm noticing is I want more of that yellow to shine through. And so I'm going to finish up with the pink and the magenta here, clean my brush or get a different brush, and then I'll come back with a little bit more of that yellow. A lot of times I will, even if you're working on canvas or board, I like to get that color all the way around the edges. So when this piece gets hung on the wall, it does not need to be framed, right? If you like those wood edges, that's fine too. But just give a little touch of paint. I put a little too much paint on here. That dollop of pink came out pretty big over there, but that's okay. I've got a book sitting beside me, and I'll pull out some book pages to clean off my brush and then have some nice collage fodder for later. I'm paying attention to my brush strokes, right? That there's this, they're all kind of going the same direction. Okay, this is getting really pink now. There was a lot of that pink, a little bit of that orange. And I'm not judging the direction the strokes are going. I'm just noticing, isn't that interesting? My hand is wanting to really go in that direction. I don't know if it's the brush. And there's something about working on the wood panel. It's very dry here right now, so crazy dry. And so what I also have noticed and am noticing this morning is the paint is drying really fast. So I'm going to drop that brush and grab a different one over here and get some more of that yellow. So when I'm working intuitively, I like to have a lot of brushes. So then I also don't have to pause and rinse my brush or, get it dry. When I'm working in intuitive layers like this, I want that brush to be super, super dry. That will help us get nice transparent layers. Yeah, definitely. I've been painting a lot with yellow and orange lately. They're not my normal colors. What I'm loving is I can still see some of the marks through the background here. And at this stage, we're just playing. It's not intended to look like anything. I don't even need to cover the whole board. I had enough paint that I did cover it. I wanted a little more of that yellow flowing through there, and this already makes me super happy. I might pause. From Malta, hello Lorraine, welcome from Malta. Great to have you here with us this morning. And some of the things that I love to do with intuitive painting, again, I'm just trusting this is about playing, is I want to pause and look. I want to just notice where it's at, what stage is it at, how's it going. And I'm kind of thinking maybe I want to come in and I'm just using the end of my paintbrush. This is a pretty fat paintbrush. Just going to scratch into that paint a little bit. There are so many different playful painting techniques, and this process is wonderful for just exploring them all, learning what it is that you enjoy, what it is that you could care less about. We all are attracted to different marks and strokes and ways of putting paint on the canvas, and just, none of them are right or wrong. And so much of this is not about having any judgment. This already feels pretty to me, and I could almost just stop here, but that would make a very short video. But there's something about these colors that are speaking to me, which means that by the end of the painting, I'm going to want to bring back those bright pinks and yellows into this painting. All right, so I'm going to hit this with the dryer so that I can continue the process. If I were painting 3 p.m. there, happy evening or afternoon to you. If I were doing this in my studio and I had limited time, having a craft dryer helps you make that process go faster. But if I were short on time and I only had 20 minutes to play, I would just come in and do this much and walk away and then come back and add another layer another time. So remembering that intuitive painting is a process and a practice. It doesn't have to happen in one setting. It can happen over time. I'm not going to worry about it being completely dry, right? It's still got some sticky parts on it. I didn't worry about drying the edges. Now I have painty fingers and I'm happy. So in our local little library, there was a beaten up copy of this book, and it's got some great illustrations and nice big words. It's going to be fun for collage. And it's also great, like if I want to pick up a little more of that paint, or I want to have something to kind of clean my brushes off. Interesting, I'm getting some things where the paint that I'm lifting up then is laying down. So this tells me where some of this yellow over here is still really wet. And then already I have this really fun piece of paper that is the beginning of some collage fodder. So this is dry-ish and we're going to see what happens. So now I want to bring in some of those cool colors, right? So I'm going to bring in some blue and some green. This is a turquoise blue. I don't think I want that one. I think I want this nice. So this is a golden teal blue. It's one of my favorite blues. And I'm going to add a little bit of paint and I'm going to change over to a smaller brush. Part of creating visual interest, even in an intuitive painting practice like this one, is to change things up. If I kept using the same brushes over and over again, I would end up with all the same marks and it would end up being kind of boring. So I'm going to do that same process, but I'm going to do less paint this time. And I'm feeling like maybe let's follow the flow of some of these circles this morning. And because I took the time to dry my canvas first, that paint is sitting pretty nicely on top. It's not blending. I even picked a different yellow than my normal yellow this morning. So part of that intuitive process and why I call this painting freedom is because it's about play and about just trusting where are we going? What are we doing? Zero destination in mind. And I pay attention to what are the colors that I'm feeling drawn to this morning. And why, right? The colors I chose are very happy, bright colors. This green, you can see this green is a super transparent green. So if you're new to painting, on every tube of paint, it tells you how opaque or transparent the paint is. There's usually a little square. So this one, half the square is black. So it has a lot of transparency in it. So it's not giving me quite the boldness of the green that maybe I would have liked. And it's just that first layer, so I'm just going with it. I seem to be really wanting to paint circles today. Okay, we're just going to keep painting circles. Maybe a little more green in a couple of spots. Now it's in the getting into the next few stages, or the messy middle of the painting. So this is where I'm having to let go of what I painted before that I liked. Part of intuitive painting is learning to let go of the process. I have a method. I'm following the method here. Started with the warm colors, moved to the cool colors, and I'm just in a spirit of play. And yet I'm looking at this going, okay, it's starting to feel a little chaotic. And when I think about fireworks feel like chaos to me. I like to watch fireworks from afar, where I can't necessarily hear all of the sounds, but I can see the pretty colors because I get a little overwhelmed by the sound. And I don't like it when people set them off in our neighborhood, which they're not supposed to do here. And it really upsets animals a lot. I'm going to dry this brush off again because I really liked this one. This one feels brand new. This is a great starter set of brushes. These Simply Simmons. They're great for watercolor or acrylic. And they definitely don't last forever, but this one is brand new, so it has this really beautiful little tip on the process here. And I'm feeling like I want to write or draw or maybe scribble again. So this is a really hard pencil. This is a 2H, and I'm wondering what it will do on the canvas. I'm wanting to maybe bring in a little more contrast. Because I'm working on wood, the surface is nice and hard. Those squares feel fun. I'm still scratching through the paint. It's not going to hurt the pencil at all. So this again is just trusting, noticing what feels fun, what feels joyful, following that next inspiration. And I know you can hardly see that. Do some over here. So I'm getting a little bit of the lead in there, and I'm also scratching through the paint that is underneath, which feels really fun. This time I'm not going to dry it. I'm going to leave that paint a little bit wet, and I want to come in and now I want to add some contrast, right? So we want to, hi Georgia, you need to come say good morning too? Yes? The kitties have to come say good morning, except she always wants to sit on the table. And I'm going to play with this metallic black and see what happens if it creates enough of a contrast or if it ends up being a little bit gray. So I'm going to just squirt some of that on my table here, and you're going to have to go away, Missy. And I'm just going to start by taking the scraper. You could do this with a hotel key card, gift card, or any other piece of plastic. I really love these scrapers as well. These come in like, sets of 6 for a few dollars at art supply stores or on Amazon. But I'm going to take this catalyst wedge and I'm going to daub it through the paint to get paint on the edge. And I'm going to come in and do a little mark making. Again, I'm just creating some contrast. I'm playing. This is like the painting for me this morning. There's something about the sort of like really getting in there with my tools, moving some energy out onto the page. I seem to be doing a lot of marks and movements that feel like fireworks, not a surprise. The craziest experience I ever had with fireworks when I was in college. I think it was the summer after my sophomore year. I spent a summer in Spain we traveled for a couple of weeks and then we went to a Spanish language school to work on our Spanish. Now I'm liking it better. It's feeling really happy. And I don't even remember what the occasion it was, but we went to school in Santiago de Compostela, which is the end of the Camino de Santiago, the long walk that people do. And the cathedral where they walk to, where the relics of Saint John are supposedly interred. And when you go into the church, the place where his bones are interred, the rivets from so many hands touching, there's like fingerprints in the stone from the thousands and thousands and thousands, probably millions at this point, of people that had touched this place. It was pretty magical. Now I'm going to come in with my paintbrush and add some different marks so we get some variety in here. And there was some kind of festival during this summer when we were there with, stages and live music. and fireworks. And they literally built a facade of fireworks onto the front of the church. They were on the lamp post in the middle of the crowds all around the plaza where the cathedral is. And it was the craziest experience because you're literally in the middle of the fireworks, like no safety precautions, and they're kind of far away and off, on in the distance, like they are a lot of times here in the United States, and they were going off right beside you. I remember it being just a crazy experience and also incredibly beautiful to watch the entire facade of the cathedral light up with the fire. It was pretty magical. Okay, that feels like enough black for now. I get really caught up in intuitive painting. I love the mark making process. And what can happen for me is that I overdo it because I'm having so much fun. And so sometimes giving yourself just, 10 to 20 seconds or 30 seconds to play with one of the steps can help you move along. And I will document the steps as we go and then go back and put them in the description of the video so you also don't have to remember them. So I still have all this paint left on my palette here, so I'm just gonna play with that. I've got this piece of paper that I started. I do not like to waste paint, so I tend to use it up a lot. Plus then I'm creating this amazing fodder. This is just as fun and playful for me as the other parts. All right, so we're going to let this dry, and the next step is going to be to add white. And I'm trying to decide if I want to use white acrylic, which will be a little more transparent, or if I actually want to maybe come in with some gesso and have it be a little bit more opaque. How's everybody else doing while this is getting dry? Let me check in and ask how you're doing. So to sort of document the steps so far, we did some writing on our canvas. We started with warm colors, that pink and the yellow. So, the warm colors are your reds, yellows, and oranges generally. Did some scratching through in that. Then we added the cooler colors, a little bit of blue and green, and also played with our pencil and had some fun with the mark making and our pencil. And then we added some black for contrast. So that's where we are so far. And I'm kind of thinking, just again, coming in with a few little words. I'm just writing freedom a few times in the canvas. I'm really enjoying today, sort of scratching through the paint. It's a great way to kind of break up some of these bigger blocks of paint and create again a little more visual contrast. So you can see where I just kind of came and scratched through. So this one was already a little bit dry. So I have to work a little bit harder, so that's kind of fun. Just break up some of the chunks of the black. Thank you, Anne. I appreciate that, and I hope some of you are creating along with me or working on your own crafty projects as we go. So I am just back from a wonderful 4 days in the beautiful trees in Oregon where I enjoyed time with 3 of my business art besties. We've been masterminding together for, I don't know, at least 3 years now. And this was the first time all 4 of us were able to get together in person and play in my dear friend Andrea Chebelou's new studio in Oregon, where she hosts beautiful retreats called Retreats in the Trees. It was so much fun to be there, and we had nothing to do while we were there except play. And what a gift for all of us to have that experience of just being able to indulge and play and all the different things in Andrea's studio, which is abundant with supplies and ideas. And we made jewelry, so now we all have matching bracelets. I got to make a candle out of beeswax in some beautiful pottery made by Andrea's daughter, and we just painted our little hearts out. We made journals. Like, it was just felt like this same process of really being able to just enjoy a lot of creative freedom. And most of us don't get that opportunity as often as we would like. All right, I'm going to pull another page out of this book, and I'm feeling like I want to sprinkle a few words in here. Again, I didn't go in thinking, oh, it's got to have collage, but now I'm like, I'm feeling maybe it wants some words this morning. So again, just trusting that process. And many of you know, I love poetry. So here's a line that says, serious poetry, how fun is that? Here's one that says, am I missing something here? So again, just being really playful in the approach and the intention. Me too, Carol. It feels really good, and it feels like excuse me, grab some water. This is a continuation of my weekend with my friends, even though I didn't know that when I sat down to play. As I'm sitting here, I'm remembering the freedom that I felt in being there. Oh, this one's fun. It says, and then I move on to my big finish. Children's books are great for collage like this because the words are a little bit bigger. They are wonderful for found poetry. And I'm looking at this going, I'm missing something. What's a step that I am missing right now? And I just figured out what it is, and I will share that in a moment. I'm just saying that aloud so that I don't forget. I'm something of an outlaw. That one sounds kind of fun. Again, just one page of a book, not overthinking of it, leaning into my own rebel self, right? And, if we think about the United States, it was started by outlaws and rebels and revolutionaries. Okay, so I'm going to put these down with some matte medium. They're probably going to get some black paint on them because I'm not going to worry too much about drying the paint underneath, and I'm just using my fingers. So that may smear a little bit, so be it. These are all going to get painted over in the end, most likely anyway. I totally get that, Carol, about your brain not being awake. Mine could have been a little more awake, but it's one of those mornings I was up 5:40, I guess, and I put the pot of coffee on, fed the cats, marinated some steak to grill for later today, and so I've been definitely on the go this morning, and sometimes I love mornings where I'm on the go, and sometimes I love mornings where I just putter and do nothing. And I've had a few of those mornings since I have been home. Took me a couple of days to get back on schedule. So I put a few words in here. And so the first thing I notice is there's 4, and I really prefer odd numbers, so it looks a little too even. But one of the steps that I really recommend and that I didn't do, and sometimes I forget to do because I'm on camera, is to change the perspective. The nice thing about working small, whether I was doing this on a small movable canvas like this one or a giant canvas on my easel, is that it is important to shift the perspective, right? And when I think about this idea of painting freedom, right? Freedom for me means also that I'm flexible, that I am willing to shift my perspective, that I'm willing to meet other people where they are at, not where I am at. Here's one that says, I smile, which feels fun for today. And in fact, those words, so I smile. Hola, Blanca. Good morning, my friend. I smile is a great thing to remember in the middle of our own painting practice when we maybe perhaps feel a little bit stuck or unsure. Like, I tend to get serious, and I realize that, there's sometimes an intense focus, and my kids used to say, Mom, are you mad? And I'm like, no, I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking. So sometimes it's important to just pause and smile, catch our breath, take a look. Oops, come back. All right. So we got a few words in there again already. Like, this is a fun process. We're only 42 minutes. Well, I didn't even start painting then, right? But just remembering, turn it around, look at it going in different directions. I don't even know yet which way the final painting will go. Now I'm trying to remember which way I started. All right, I think I'm going to paint on it this way next and to see what changes. So I was painting on it horizontally. I'm going to change it a little bit to the vertical. Carol's saying, I have a stash of assorted canvas boards floating around forever and felt too intimidated to paint them. And do you think I can find them now? It's really lovely when you do find them to paint on the wood. There's something about the hard surface and the way that the paint sits on them. And remember, it's just paint and wood, right? It's just paint and wood. I'm trying to get rid of that glare, but then it's so dark. Okay, I'm going to hit this with the dryer. I want to get it really dry. So bye, Tori. Have a great workout and a great rest of your day with your family. I want to get it really dry because I'm going to add white next. And I really want that white to show up on here. All right, so I'm going to grab some white acrylic paint. And my paper over here is just freezer paper or butcher paper. It's a great surface to work on as you're kind of under paper. It's a little plasticky, so it doubles as a palette, which I love. And I think I'm going to come in and put some of these random letters on here. And what I need is a makeup sponge. I find these foam stamps are a little bit thirsty. Like and the paint, because I'm in Colorado, dries pretty fast on them. So I'm going to load that up with quite a bit of paint, which means my first print off of this may be a little bit sloppy. We'll see. Not enough paint, right? So having to maybe even water that paint down just a little bit, get it a little more flowy, and maybe move a little faster. A little better, but still not super bright on there. And this is part of that process of, oh, that didn't work. What else can I try? Right? That didn't work. What else can I try? That is not working on there this morning, which is interesting. So I'm going to let go of that. And I'm actually going to come and let's try a little white gesso instead of that acrylic paint. And I want to start to get some organics. I have a lot of sort of, square, right? Lot of lines and circles. And now I want to maybe start to bring in some different shapes randomly, turning that stencil around, moving it different directions. I don't want them all going in the same direction. Now I'm starting to get some of that white. I love that. I love it. Beautiful, Carol. Thank you for sharing. Hi, Carol Pullen. Great to see you here. Get more patience or invest in a dryer. I got to meet Carol Pullen live in person last week in Oregon. We had a little gathering. That was very fun. And Carol Pullen, before I got a craft dryer, I literally just use my hair dryer. So if you have a hair dryer, it works great. Just use it on the low setting. And so you don't need fancy tools or the Ranger brand. Mine's an old embossing tool. I thought I was going to love embossing, but that was one of those things that lasted a hot minute, and I got rid of everything but the dryer because it works great. All right. Happy chaos. Woohoo! So now we're feeling really chaotic and messy. And now it's going to be time to tone it all down here. When my daughter comes home, the hairdryer, ends up upstairs, and she always has to come find it in the studio because I almost never blow dry my hair. So turning this around again, I'm wanting to bring some of that bright yellow back. Trying to think if there's any other marks or play. Again, just trusting. Haha, Yvonne, you missed the mess. Good morning, good morning. I know it's early over there in California and a holiday. I'm glad hopefully you were sleeping in. And I'm wanting to bring some of that yellow back, start to tone some things down. And this is where it's great to sort of pause, look at it, turn it around, ask, what does it need? What am I noticing? Right now, what I'm feeling again is that chaos, again, that sort of, firework. For me, chaos is the opposite of freedom. I don't like chaos. Well, I love it in my painting, but not in my life. And so I'm noticing that for me, what feels good is to start to calm this down a little bit. And I get to decide how I want to do that. But I'm also starting to feel, yay, I'm glad you were sleeping in. It's important to do that too. To feel like I want to think about where am I going with this, And am I going to have her be a mask or a stencil? Thank you, Yvonne. Kind of maybe seeing her standing in a field of flowers, perhaps, celebrating. I was also thinking about sunflowers this morning, and maybe a couple of big abstract flowers would be fun. Yes, Carol Guthrie, beautiful. I love that. What will I choose today? And for me, what a gift that I get to choose. I get to choose what's best for me today. Okay, I'm not feeling her. So again, part of that intuitive process, I'm just trying things on for size, right? I'm trying things on for size. And there's a few different ways to kind of calm a painting down when you start to get this chaos. And one of my favorite ways is just to paint a translucent or more transparent layer over the top of the whole thing so I still see all the magic underneath. I'm not letting go of that completely, but I am going to maybe calm it down. And then I'm like, but wait, I didn't do any splatters. I didn't do any drips. So my little happy inner child heart is saying, but wait, I'm not done playing yet. So I'm just listening and acknowledging that. And let me see, I know I have for making drips, one of my favorite tools for making drips are the golden fluid acrylics. Oh, there they are. I thought I had them all. Ooh, there's a hot pink that looks fun and some black. So these are great for making drips, but you can also just water down any acrylic paint and make some happy, happy drips. And they create great texture and play on the page. So I'm going to turn this a little bit over on the side here. We'll see if there's even still, oh, look at that bright pink, such a happy, happy pink. And then I always have a spray bottle full of water on my desk. It's good for chasing away cats or for painting with. And I'm just going to add some water to that. I'm going to let that roll. Okay, it needed that hot pink. I was thinking it was going to be black, but I'm like, no, that pink is what it needed. And I'm just going to let that flow and play. More water. Now I have this big wash of that hot pink over there that feels really fun. I can move some of this around a little bit. Bring that back. I'm going to get some just right in the middle here. There's something about squirting and flowy paint that makes me super, super happy. Again, protect your surface. Look how much, is flowing off the edge of the canvas there onto this plastic surface, which is great. So you definitely, if you're going to play with really watery paint like this, you're going to want to make sure that you have something, even a piece of wax paper can be great. I don't know why, but that made me super happy. It changed the look and the feel, and it started to calm it down just a little bit. But now I'm feeling like maybe just a spot of black drips. Bring a little bit of that contrast back, just a little bit. And it's going to kind of mix with some of that other paint. Notice how I'm sort of turning the canvas around so those drips are going to go in different ways. I know that gets a little blurry there when I lift it up. Again, this feels like that idea of painting freedom and play. sort of making the canvas, giving it a different feel. Now it's really looking interesting. And because I allowed myself to do this, it's sort of changing the direction I might want to go or the feel of it. I think it's, let's see if I can pick up a little bit of that pink and move it around. And now I'm noticing I'm wanting some of that bright blue to come back more, so that's going to shift what that next layer is. So I'm going to grab my rag here, dry that surface up, and then I'm going to spend a couple of minutes here and get this super, super dry before I go on to the next layer. How's everybody else doing? Anybody else painting along? This is going to take a minute, so if you need to go get up and refill your coffee or your water, it's great. You won't miss anything. And I love how the ink is settling into some of the other lines and marks that I made. Seascape sounds amazing. I love it. There's a lot of water on here, so this is definitely going to take a little bit of time to dry. So it's getting there. It's not dry yet, but I wanted to show you another fun thing that you can do when... Yeah, great question, Carol. Sit tight for just a second. Let me grab these. Grabbing just a bigger stencil here. My stencils are all tangled up. So when you have some big patches of color and paint that are still wet, you can also pull some of that paint off through the stencil and create kind of a reverse design. Carol, I decided I wasn't quite ready to calm it down, that I wanted to keep playing for a minute. So then I'm just going to take a baby wipe, and that may not be dramatic enough. It'll be a little more dramatic here where we still have that black. So I'm just going to pull the paint back a little bit. And you can see I got the triangle shape. It's pretty dry. And that also helps to just break up those big spots of color. Want to bring a little more airiness back to it, but I'm loving where it's going. It's super interesting. So to answer Carol's question of how I would calm it down at this stage, I'm going to hit it with the dryer again first. Making you think peacock. Yeah, some of that little bit flowy of the tail and all the colors. One of Andrea's neighbors had peacocks, and they are quite loud creatures. So one of the ways to calm it down would be to just take some white paint and paint out the whole thing with a layer of white acrylic paint, which might look something like this. So we'll practice a couple and see. So don't have a panic attack because I'm very comfortable painting over my paintings. So I might take just some white acrylic paint, which this one is pretty transparent. And I'm looking for my scraper because what I love about working with scrapers is it allows me to get the layers of paint very thin so everything shows through. So one way to calm it down would be to just let it go. Now remember, this is still a little bit wet, so some of those colors are probably going to mix and mingle. And when I do that, I still have beautiful layers underneath. Those very early marks I made in the paint are also showing through there. So that would be one way to just paint it out with white paint and then kind of go again. But I don't want to lose quite that much of this. So the other way that I like to calm it down, and I'm just going to use up that little bit of white paint on my, so this is still very wet. Okay, so I'm going to hit this with the dryer again. And so the other way that I like to do it is to create a glaze, and you can create a glaze with any color of paint. So this is a very opaque blue. So I'll show you what the difference would be if I just came in over the top with this blue. I wouldn't see as much as the background. You can see some of those colors are bleeding through, but I want you to see what happens when I take this, and you could add a glazing medium if you had it, but matte medium works great to create a glaze. So I'm going to mix some of this teal with some matte medium, and I'm going to put a layer over the whole thing, and I'll be able to see even more of what's underneath. And I'm going to break up some of this white real quick because I don't want that big swash of white on there. So the other cool thing is once you get each of these layers down and I'm like, oh, it's too much, I didn't want that much, then you can always come in with that baby wipe before it gets super dry. And look what happens when I just start to push those colors back. So now I'm calming it down with that white, but I'm losing less of the magic underneath. So that also creates a little bit of magic. I'm actually kind of liking the white pushed back. What happens if we do that with the blue? We'll get a sense. So because it's still a little bit wet, it's getting kind of muddy there. But you can kind of do the same thing, but I'm really liking the white over here, how that looks. So that might be the direction I go, but first let's get this even more dry, because no matter what I add over the top right now, I can see that these blacks are still wet and bleeding through, and I don't want it all to become mud. So the secret to not creating mud in multi-layered paintings like this is, like Carol said, patience or a dryer. I love that, Yvonne. Thank you. And I think where a lot of us get stuck in a sort of mixed media layered approach like this is we're afraid of the mess. And we don't know how to get from the mess. Or when I first learned art journaling and mixed media painting, what happened for me was everything turned out muddy because I didn't understand about that patience of drying the layers in between. So this is very much a very messy middle, very chaotic. And what's sort of surprising me is that this right here is now feeling sort of grounded with that white, and I'm feeling almost like some tree roots growing on here. So maybe I'm starting to see some movement in the painting. Look at those happy hands. So I'm starting to see that little bit of movement in the painting. These lines are sort of lifting me up. So it feels like the painting wants to go this direction. It wasn't where I thought this was going to go, but now what I'm feeling is this joyful sort of uplifting, almost like we would see with fireworks, but it's feeling kind of tree-like. So that means that I am probably going to paint all of this white. But before I want to do that, I want to show you what it would look like to add a little bit of matte medium. I'm going to do about half and half matte medium. Well, it's a little more than half and half because that's what came out. Matte medium to that teal paint. Just going to take a little palette knife. And what I love is it doesn't change the color of the paint because matte medium is transparent, right? Totally, it has no pigment. So now if I come in here with this, let me grab a brush and paint that on, all of a sudden that turquoise, and that was a terrible brush, all of a sudden that paint is very, and that black, it's so interesting, that black of that fluid acrylic is bleeding through everything. But now when I paint this on there, all of a sudden it's much more transparent and translucent. But it's still giving me a lot of coverage. So if I want even less color and more transparency, what happens if we just add a little more matte medium? So for me, this is part of the intuitive play. Let me just try. Let me experiment. What might happen if? There we go. Now I got the look that I wanted. So I actually needed more of the paint. And so get that out of the glary. So now watch when I lay this on. I'm getting where I'm seeing all the beautiful underlayers not mixing. So it's very different than the white, right? So down here, we did that same thing with the white, but we had to push it back because it went on really dark. So in this case, I don't have to do anything to that. I love the transparency. So I'm going to keep going with this. I was thinking it was going to be all white, and now I'm thinking it's going to be all blue. I need a lot more paint. And it makes me so happy to be able to see all of those layers underneath. So Carol, did I answer your question about calming it down? So either white or one of the colors that you've already used in the painting. Notice I didn't come in with a completely different color because I want it to be in the same palette that I've already played with. I don't want to lose all of the things that are underneath. But this is how we calm it down. And if it's going on too thick, that's okay. We can fix that too. So trying not to get too much paint on my brush, not really loading up my brush so I get thinner layers. I'm even loving some of the texture that's showing through from the paint underneath. I'm going to come in with a baby wipe and maybe smooth a little this out, push it back even a little bit more. And I can still see words, I can still see lines and marks, but suddenly, like I feel myself catching my breath. I'm like, oh, it's not chaotic anymore, right? It feels calm. It feels like a fresh new beginning. I wouldn't say it's peaceful, right? It's still pretty busy, but it's now, for me personally, a happy busy. Baby wipes are your best friends in your studio. Hi, Teddy. Yes, that is the goal here, is to still see some of that peeking through. And I even want some places where maybe it's coming through even a little bit more. So that pink is starting to feel like a little bit of fire in there peeking through. I did not know when I started this that I needed that fluorescent pink in my life, but apparently I did. And this is going to be my ground and my roots, so I don't need to bring a lot of that back. So now what I'm noticing is definitely want to bring some yellow back. And I love the way it looks. It doesn't feel finished, but it's getting closer, right? To look at all that yummy texture and color. So what I'm not liking are these lines, but as soon as I saw those lines, it made me think of a grove of aspen trees. So again, I'm going to follow that nudge, and that perspective is going to shift. I'm going to turn this again, just noticing where I'm going, looking at all the different angles and the parts. So now these feel like the trunks of trees down here. Happy Independence Day, Barbara. Good morning, good morning. I could hear Georgia in the background. She's got one of her little plastic spirals. All right, so again, pausing, like every part of the intuitive painting process is just pausing to notice. Where's it at? What's next? What direction am I going? Thank you, Ada. Yeah, me too. The baby wipes just makes it a complete, such a transformation. All right, so now it feels like this is up. I love this magic that's happening in here. So there's definitely now some tree movement over here. And I am going to put in a couple of big aspeny looking trees in here, and we're just going to see where we get to. So I'm going to actually come in with some gesso for those trunks. They might get a little blue in them. That's okay. And I'm using gesso. It's just a little bit more opaque. And I'm going to use my scraper for this. This is a catalyst wedge. It's one of my favorite tools. And for a long time, I didn't even know what it was or how to use it. When I first started painting, Brad and the kids gave me a couple of these fun tools for Christmas one year, and I wasn't even sure what to do with them. And since then, I have fallen in love with them. So I'm going to get a bunch of paint on the edge of that wedge, and I'm going to come in and start building out the trunks of those aspens. Again, I want to keep this abstract. I love aspen trees. I have my own like little tiny grove of them right in front of my house. And they're magical trees. They kind of get these eyes on them, these black eyes with all this cool texture. And from a story or a science perspective, when you see aspen trees, they're never just one tree. I didn't know this. My daughter taught me this, that they live in families and they're all connected underneath. Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. Right? These wedges are so cool. And now it's starting to come together and look like something and not just an abstract mess, right? But I still see and feel all the magic that's underneath as well. Oops, I put matte medium on there instead of gesso. Silly Minette. And to me, this is what painting freedom looks like. It is about just following that step-by-step process and flow, letting the adventure take me, surprise me, and delight me. And so when I paint aspens, I think about all like the magic that is happening underneath that, we don't even see. So we'll have one kind of off in the distance in the background here. We're sort of creating a grove of aspens. And for the first time, I'm hosting my next in-person art retreat the first weekend in October. And it's going to be in Estes Park, Colorado, up among all the aspens and the towering pines. And it's all about connecting to our inner wisdom through intuitive, creative practice. We won't be painting, we'll be stitching and collaging, maybe some watercolor as well. Haven't completely decided on the curriculum yet, but the registration page is now live on my website at MinetteRiordan.com. There should be a link in the description to my website of all my videos. And this is feeling very stark white. So again, I'll let this get really dry and I'm going to bring in some other colors. When you see aspen trees, they're actually, the bark looks quite white, but it's a little yellowy gray tinge to it. Get one nice tall one in here. So I'm trying to create visual interest by not having them be, I noticed they were starting to get all the same height, right? And the trees are all different heights, so I want to make sure that I'm getting that nice variety in. Get a nice tall one in up there. But if you love the mountains, you love creating in community with other women, you love art that is introspective and takes you deeper into your own self knowing, then this one is for you. called Wonder and Wisdom, and it is all about connecting to our own intuition and wisdom through art and walks in the mountains. It's going to include a half-day tour of Rocky Mountain National Park because we can't be at the gateway and not actually go into the park. Okay, I think maybe one more way over here on the edge. Saturday, we're going to go up to Estes Park. That's where my mom and stepdad live. Be up in the trees. Always makes me so happy to be up there. All right, so now we have some happy, happy trees. Come back with a smaller brush, and I'm going to start bringing in some detail. Definitely still want to bring some more light back into it. Oh, hello, you had pink on you. And these are going to need maybe some grasses or something around them to just, still a little pink, that's hilarious, okay, to help them feel a little more grounded and not like they're just sort of hanging in the background. And in Colorado, when you see a grove of aspens, they're usually, tucked in to a meadow. All right, so I'm going to catch my breath here and take a look. Someday, Barbara, that's right, everything in perfect timing. Okay, so I'm thinking definitely want to get some black in there, and I'm wondering if I just want a tiny little bit of that fluid black. If I don't like it, I can paint it over to kind of bring in those shadows to the aspens, start to just give them a little dimension. Aspen kind of look like birches, right? Kind of look like birches. Okay, Barbara, I can do that. When you said that, I was thinking about that. It's like I really need to get next year's dates up and going. I'm already planning the spring one will probably be mid-May sometime. And working with the scrapers, it's not precise, right? Like I don't have a ton of control, so I have to just kind of, again, that's that intuitive, just let go, let it do what it wants to do. And my favorite mantra is everything is paint overable. Everything is paint overable. We want to get some of that black going in our branches as well. Now I'm feeling really happy. So I'm probably going to have one in May and next fall in October. I don't have exact dates. I'm doing one with collaborating with a wonderful artist named Emma Freeman, who does a lot of slow stitching. So we're going to do an intuitive painting and slow stitching retreat together. We're still trying to figure out exactly where we want to go for that one, but that'll be next October, and we're going to do prayer flags and altar cloths. Lots of magic fun. Notice I'm putting the dark all on the same side of the trees. It's creating some nice contrast, but also starting to give our trees just a little bit of shape and dimension, bring them to life just a little bit. Still keeping everything loose and abstract. You mean the catalyst ones that are different sizes and shapes? Is that what you mean? They're like clay shapers, but they're paint shapers. The catalyst company makes them, but they're like a paintbrush, but they're plastic on the end. Is that what you mean by a paint shaper? I played one with one at Andrea's when I was there. I don't own any of those, but yes, I have used those before. And actually, that would be perfect for something like this, Carol. Okay, I'm loving my little grove of trees. These are feeling way too white, so I want to tone them down just a little bit. So I'm wondering if I just bring, yes, yeah, the I have seen those and played with them. I don't own any. So I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow just right into my black here, and just black and yellow make a cool green, and that may be a little more green than I want, but I want to just start getting some other color in here. I'm going to bring some blue in here and cover this up a little bit. Starting to bring some color in there. Again, just trying to trust the process, not get too attached. Yes, are you coming to say hello? Come on. Yes, up or down. She sits or she stands beside me with her paws on my leg until she gets invited up, which I do appreciate. But if I don't pay attention to her, then she starts to put her little claws in me and say, "Hey, I'm here." Ah, cats. And I'm still using the same colors that I started with. So I use the same yellow to mix that color. It still feels a little too green, but it's a layer, right? I'm just getting some color down on my trees. Everything's paint overable. Getting some paint where I don't want it, totally fine. Liking the effect of the paint, the palette knife to just move some of that paint around. And aspens have like really beautiful bright green leaves. And in the fall, I don't know if they will have changed by the time of my retreat, but I'm hopeful. And in the fall, they turn brilliant, brilliant gold. So we don't get the gorgeous color that you get on the East Coast with all the tons of reds and oranges, but we get like flame gold, and the big mountains look like they are on fire. It's quite magical. So one of the things about aspen trees is their bark is not flat. It's very, very textured. Okay, still a little too green, but that's okay. It's going to be a good undercolor, and then I'm going to come in with maybe something a little bit softer over the top when it's dry. but these babies definitely need some leaves and some more color. And I'm going to want to also come in and play somehow with some grasses in here. And so I'm just going to keep pushing that background back. I'm probably not going to finish this today, but I'll come in over the weekend sometime and play and finish it up. All right, I got to figure out. So one of the things that I would do at this point, I left my phone on the other, is go look at a photograph of a aspen tree and get a little clearer sense of the color of the trunk. I'm just out for a walk in my neighborhood and there's bunches of them. You know, what I see is that white, right? But when you get up close to them, you see, oh, they're not actually white. They have a little more texture, a lot of texture, a little more color. They have really dramatic black eyes. So they have really kind of dramatic shapes and holes in them. They have to protect whole groves of them in the mountains because the elk love the bark and they like to rub their antlers on it and they like to eat the bark, and so they do a lot of damage to the aspen trees. Okay, that's better. Now they're starting to just come to life just that little bit more. Feel a little bit more like aspen trees. And they also have like literally eyes around them, right? Where these have spots have texture. These are already drawing fast. So they're not so solid. They literally have these beautiful rings around them. I love that. So when you scrape back, you get some of the pink layers underneath. So just again, same tools, right? And just coming back, playing, just continuing to add a little texture. Maybe we'll add a little definition, help mix those colors up a little bit more. Georgia, really? She's in paper shredding mode and she's on my desk knocking everything off and shredding paper. Oh, isn't that fun? So that one, right? You can see it's a little bit glary, right? It pushed all the way back to some of those pinks that are underneath, and I love that. It's going to make it more interesting if I just continue to bring some of those other colors back. These are going to settle in to the background more. I have an amazing pencil sharpener that my daughter gave me for Christmas a few years ago. The brand is an AFMAT, AFMAT, and it makes the best long, sharp tips and is great for my work with Prismacolors or other colored pencils. Okay, now I have that color showing through. I'm like, I want that on all the trees. So they start to feel less separate and less like they're sitting on top and more like they're integrated with the background. Yes, absolutely, Carol. If I don't come to a place of completion today, which I'm not feeling like I'm quite going to be there, I will definitely film the second part and upload it as well, or I'll just go live maybe on Saturday or something. So this is what the trees needed. They needed texture, right? They were looking too flat. They didn't have quite enough color in them, and they were a little too white just sitting on the surface. But now this is all mixing together and just integrating more into that background, letting that background peek through. Making me much happier, much more interesting, right? And again, my inner child loves the scribbling. So this is like, talk about freedom and play. And I might just bring some of that nice scratchy pencil all the way up into those branches. Notice how I'm holding my pencil loosely off to the side, right? When I do that, I'm not holding it like I'm writing, but I'm holding it so I don't have a ton of control over where it's going. I'm almost a little bit delaying about the leaves because I'm in my head, I'm like, what do I want to use to add the leaves? I love aspen leaves. When you look at an aspen leaf, they look like hearts. Lots of pretty little hearts, but in this case, they're kind of, off in the distance here. So it's going to be, I think, some greens and some yellows. All right, I might clean a little bit of this up in a few places. And I'm feeling like this needs to have some green and become sort of maybe meadow-like with some blooming flowers in it as well. And Anne, I like to think about it is we just don't know, right? Until, I'm what things will do until we're willing to experiment and play and see what they do, right? I think I didn't know if this would work. I'm not running my pencil by doing this. I think, it's like when we start to integrate those other tools, we can see what's possible. And so much about intuitive painting is about just possibility, right? What else is possible? And remembering that it's just paint and paper. It's just a pencil. And if I ended up absolutely hating this, which I'm not at the moment, right? But I probably will go through a stage where I don't like it at all. I would just take my gesso and paint the whole thing out and start all over again, right? Would start all over again with the process. So now I'm loving the trees. They have a lot of texture. They have more color. And at the very end, they're going to need a little bit more white highlight or maybe even a little bit more dark along the edges. But I feel like they need some time to get really, really dry. I still want them to have a little bit more dimension. So that could be something as simple as just a little bit of highlight down, right down the center of the trunk in a few spots already. Woo, look at that. Oh, that made me so happy. Just that tiny little bit of white. And I think let's try a little, oh no, there's one of my a little small, tiny little brush here. And if I just come in and I just bring that white right down the center of those, not a solid line, You're going to see already now it's going to help to brighten that up, and it's also going to just continue to give a little bit of dimension to the trees. Being mindful if that paint gets mixed in with the other paints, I want to keep it pretty white. Get that little bit of highlights in there. Doesn't need a lot. And it's fascinating to always look at the painting on the screen versus what I'm seeing over here as well, because it looks different. Noticing this one didn't get any or quite enough of that greeny shade on it, so I might come back. So this now is like the sun is shining directly on the trunks of the trees. If I get this finished, I can take it up to my mom on Saturday. That would be fun. This ended up turning into something much more representational than I thought it would. When I started, I was anticipating having something, sort of loose and abstract, and that is not where I have ended up. Which is cool, right? It's not good or bad. It's just interesting. And the whole time I have just followed the flow of the painting. And so what I'm thinking down here is I'm going to bring in some of the greens and the yellows and the pink as if it's a blooming meadow of flowers, because when I think about July in the mountains here, it's almost, just now summer. It's really just now things are starting to bloom a lot. So I am going to get some yellow, some of my green, and I'm going to bring in a little bit of this darker blue because I think I'm going to want to mix some green. Take a tiny little bit of that blue. Yeah, and get a nice bright green in there. Sorry, you can't see that. I think it's behind my picture on the camera, but just a nice bright green there. And I'm just going to come in with my palette knife and just start to put a little bit of color in. I don't want to cover up all the blue or all the underlayers. I love knowing it's all still there. Okay, I'm liking that bright green. That's working for me. I definitely want some around the base of these trees. Notice how just that little bit, just all of a sudden they just feel like they're grounded and not like they're floating in space. It was fun when we were at Andrea's and I was working on an abstract cover for a journal that I made, and they just helped me remember like how to tie things together. It's pretty cool when you have friends who are amazing artists and having other eyeballs. So often I'm here, painting alone in my studio. All right, just starting to bring in those little bits of color there. And as I go back up under the trees, those greens are probably going to be a little bit darker as they get a little bit further away from us. And I'm using the palette knife so that I don't try to control it, that I don't try to make it look like grass or flowers. I want to keep it loose and abstract. All right, we're getting somewhere. I'm not really sure where I'm getting. Trying not to overwork it. Sometimes because I love to paint and I love the intuitive process, I overdo it. I put too much of things. And most of the time it's fixable and I can push stuff back. But then there's other times where it's like, okay, Minette, just stop playing because the play is so much fun. I don't want to stop. So I'm actually going to come in with this same little scrappy piece of paper. And I'm going to pull some of this green back off. Okay, that one didn't work. We'll fix that up in a minute. I got green on my tree, don't care, it's paint overable. But I just want to integrate this a little bit more with that background. I'm getting a little more on the trunks of the trees than I want, so I'll bring those trunks of the trees back a little more to the foreground. All of a sudden my grasses are getting tall, and I'm still liking it. I'm still liking the green. And if I were to look at a meadow of aspens, the ones in the foreground would be very stark and obvious, right? But others in the background, I wouldn't see these smaller ones through all of the shrubs. Yeah, I would say this definitely has at least another hour of painting to go on it. Again, I'm just going to push some of that green back. I will probably come in again and touch up my aspen trees at the very, very end. Bring them back out a little bit. But I just want to, again, I'm just calming things down, right? Those greens were feeling too separate. And I'm going to bring some more sort of blues and pinks maybe in here in the middle and pull that green back out a little bit because I want there to be separation between the leaves at the top and the middle ground here as well. So it feels like I got a little too happy with my green. So we'll kind of just move that back out a little bit. And working on the wood canvas, what you notice is every time I push back a layer, I don't, completely push it back, and some of those under layers will activate. So I'm noticing my, green and my blue are mixing a little bit. The way to solve that, if I wanted to make sure that none of this changed before I added the next layer, I would put a layer of matte medium and seal the entire thing and paint up from there. That's another tip for when, like when I have places like this that I always want to be able to bring those back and not lose them, I can seal them in. Today, I'm like, I don't even know where I'm going. I just want to play. So there's no method to the madness here other than exploration, right? And experimentation, which feels really fun. And exactly what I needed today to get me back into my own studio groove. I have traveled a ton the last couple of months, and I'm very happy to be home in my studio. And I have a couple of bigger painting projects that I want to be working on. And found myself, puttering a lot and not actually starting in on some of those projects. So I'm noticing here that I want to just bring some shapes of trees back where I have too many branches perhaps. And I feel myself, I get attached to pieces of the painting, right? Like I'm very attached to this pink and black here in the center. And I'm just noticing my unwillingness. I've got a little bit of the words over here, and I'm noticing my unwillingness to let go of some of these little bits and pieces in here. So just noticing it's part of that intuitive process. What am I holding on to? Where do I need to just let go a little bit more? Because what I'm loving is the blue, and what it's needing is the blue, and not all of these other colors. Noticing I'm definitely going to want to come in and brighten back up some of those tree trunks again. And I'm just going to blue up some of that green. And what I'm also noticing as I'm hitting that 2 hour mark, usually I like to take a break about and step away about every 90 minutes, but I'm like, oh, I have time to play this morning. I just want to play. And what I'm noticing is it's time to take a break, to walk away from this, let it sit for a while, and come back and look through fresh eyes. I love where it's at, and if I just keep fussing, I'm going to mess it up and then I'm going to be annoyed with myself, right? But part of me gets fiddly, and I think it's where many of us get stuck is with those fiddly bits and the fine tuning bits. And that's definitely what it needed, was that green and the blue to get mixed together. I'll give it a few last little lookovers here, and then I'm going to pause for a now. Yes, learning to let go in every area of our life, and we can practice that on the canvas. And the more that we practice detachment, letting go, being willing to make mistakes, try things over and over again, then the easier it gets to do that in other areas of our life, to things that we are find ourselves being overly attached to. Okay, now I'm back at a place where I'm loving where it's at, I'm loving where it's going, and I'm clear what the next direction is. And I'm also clear that I need to just, let me zoom out a little bit here. I need to just step away, and I need to take a break, and then I can come back, put my fun audiobook on that I'm listening to, and just get the next layer in. It needs a lot more yellow, needs lots of light, bright little yellow flowers blooming underneath, and then it needs a gorgeous canopy of leaves at the top. I'm loving the texture of the trunk. So I see what I'm loving, I see what I'm feeling attached to, and I'm clear about the next steps. And I'm also clear that when I start to feel tight and precious, it's time to walk away. So that next step in the intuitive process is learning when to walk away, right? Learning when to walk away and take a break. But I'm digging where it's going. It's a great place to stop. Thank you all so much for joining me live this morning. Thank you for, those who are catching the replay as well. A happy Independence Day to those of you in the States, and happy painting to the rest of you wherever you may be in the world. Yes, we muddy things up when we hold on too tightly, and that's when we know, when we start to hold on tightly, to take a break and walk away. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Dr. Minette Riordan. This is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette. Be sure and check out my website for all my variety of classes and workshops that are coming up or already online. Appreciate each and every one of you. Bye, everybody.